Hi everybody. The dog lamp design in this video is absolutely lovely and I wish I could say I designed it myself, but unfortunately I didn't. I have changed the head, but the main body is the same. You may have seen these little wooden dog lamps. They're all over Etsy and I've tried to track down the original designer in order to link to them, but I can't find them. So if you happen to be the original designer and you stumble across this little video, I'd like to say thank you for your gorgeous, gorgeous design, and I hope you don't mind too much that I've changed it slightly and turned it into a really big, giant dog lamp. On to the video. So a few weeks ago, I made a little dog lamp for a friend as a gift, and I thought it might be fun to see if I could scale it up and make a big dog lamp. To do it with some hardwoods like oak or something I thought would be quite expensive, and it's only sort of to see if I can do it as a little prototype anyway. So I have gone down to the wood store in Brighton, which is a terrific place. I really recommend it. Go and see them if you live in the southeast of England. They do reclaimed wood at really, really good prices. All of this wood cost £20 and it needs a bit of cleaning up, admittedly, but it's good solid pine, and I'm going to attempt to make a big dog lamp. Let's see how it goes, shall we? So the first thing I need to do is to cut up these pieces into more manageable sizes so that I can get an approximate idea of how big I want the legs to be and the body and so on. And I've also got to clean it up. So it's pretty rough in places. I've got to straighten it, make it square, and also double check there aren't any nails or staples or something equally nasty in there. So I want to get rid of that as well. So first of all, I'm going to cut it into smaller sizes rather than try to clean up a whole long plank all in one go, which would be a bit tricky. Make it more manageable first and then clean up all the edges and make them nice and square. Okay, here we go. As you can see, there are some holes in the wood and there were obviously some nails in here, or still are potentially some nails in here. So we need to check. We can't tell from just looking. The nail might have been removed or it might have been bashed in deeper, so we can't tell. So I've got a fairly cheap stud finder that I got from Amazon. If I can find where I got it from on Amazon, I'll put a link in the show notes. I bought it a while ago, so I'm not sure, but I'll see if I can find it. And as well as being a stud finder, it will find where electricity cables run behind the walls and stuff like that. I only use it really for finding nails in wood, to be honest. So let's have a look and we will see what we get. Okay, so we've definitely got some metal there. Let's check this other hole. No, so the other hole's okay, but that one's got a nail in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure I mark which one that is, and I'm just going to cut around it. I'm not going to try to remove it or anything, there's no point. I'm just slice down either side of it. I'll go through all the other bits of wood as well, just double check, and then we can get on with it. What I'm going to do here is, because I haven't got my planer jointer, I'm going to have to get rid of any twist in the wood this way. You may have seen this done by other people. You use a nice flat board, so this is a piece of MDF that I've used here. You put a little wooden fence on the end, so as it goes through the planer, as the blades are going this way, they want to push the wood this way. It just stops the wood from flying out. Of course, it's also pinching it this way, so it should be pretty secure. So to make the wood nice and stable, we're going to put some shivs into the gaps. Now, if you like a nice, neat and tidy workshop with all your drawers perfectly positioned and everything in its place, I suggest you look away now, because this is a bit of a mess, but it works for me. So here we have all my little bits of wood. We've got really super thin pieces. We've got some quite thick wedges, all sorts. I can usually find something I need from this mess. So now that I've found some little bits of wood to stick in the gap, I'm just going to put them in here. It's actually a very small amount that needs supporting here, fortunately. I never used to like glue guns, but I'm a convert for things like this. It works brilliantly and is easy to get off. So now that I've got one flat edge, I can take this off the sled and flip it over, and I can put it through without the sled because we've got a nice reference flat side. So now that I've cleaned up all the faces and they are nice and parallel to each other and all the pieces are exactly the same thickness, the next thing I need to do are the edges so that I can have nice, smooth, clean, right-angled edges here. Normally I would use my planer jointer for that, but that's still being repaired and I'm not going to get it back for a couple of weeks. So what I'm going to do is use my planer thicknesser, which I've just been using to do these sides, but I'm going to put them through on their edge and we'll run them through that way to clean everything up. Okay, I've just stopped for a second. I knew that there was a knot on here, but I thought we might be able to just smooth it out, perhaps put in a bit of filler or something. But it's gone through the planer and it's taken off quite a big chunk of wood that flew across the room, actually. And what we've seen is we can actually see the whole, I don't know how clearly that should be focusing on, the actual branch coming through the wood here, which I think's rather interesting. Look at that. Now I've cleaned up the edges, so I've got the sides nice and flat and parallel, and I've got the edges nice and cleaned up. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glue two of the pieces together to make the body. So the body is going to be a bit deeper, so we're going to glue these together like this, and then I can cut them out to make the two sides of the body. Okay, so I've prepared everything for gluing. I've put down some plastic, which I think is always a really good idea to do, because otherwise you will get glue all over your table and spend a long time getting it off again. I learned the hard way and now make sure I have everything ready so that I don't get glue all over my table. Definitely something I'd recommend. Something like this, you don't need dowels or any other thing like that, or biscuits or anything. This isn't going to be load bearing. It just needs to stick together. Okay. Okay, it's the next day. This should be nice and dry. Let's get these clamps off. Okay, so we've got our two main body parts. They're a bit wobbly. I will, we've got to clean up the glue on here. And, yeah, they're not wobbly, it's because it was sitting on the glue. Clean off this glue and might run them through the planer once more, and then we can start shaping them. It's all coming together. Okay, so I've cleaned off the glue And I'm just going to run the pieces through the planer just to clean them up, again ready for the next stage. So now I need to start shaping my pieces. I'm going to start with the bigger piece, the body piece, and what I want is for it to taper slightly down to one side. So I'm going to put some curves in at each end. And join those up. And I'm going to do something similar with the legs. So this end is going to be, well, it's currently 9 centimeters. So I'm going to set this at 4.5. And at this end I want it to taper as well. I want the leg to taper down. So at this end I'm going to make it 6. Right, I've marked all the legs and the neck part, and of course the 2 main body parts, so they're all ready to cut. But instead of doing the same sort of thing for the tail, I'm going to make it a bit more of a waggly tail, or a curvy tail. So yeah, we'll try that. Okay, we're ready to cut our pieces on the bandsaw. Well, I've got some nice little wedges to add to my collection. Very useful. So the bandsaw is really good for doing nice straight lines, and I've used it also to nibble away at the curves, and then I'm going to use the disc sander to round those off nicely a bit later. But when it comes to doing the tail, I've decided to do a bit more of a curvy tail here, and although I could use my jigsaw, I think it will struggle with the depth of the wood, so I'm going to use the bandsaw again. Ideally, I'd put a smaller blade on it. I've got a 1/2 inch blade on my bandsaw, which is great for nice straight lines, but not so good for these curves. So we're going to find it quite difficult. So what I'll do is I'll go cut a lot of relief cuts and see how well we get on doing it that way. Okay, I think that's worked out quite well. Obviously with a thinner blade it would have been much better. I could have done a much smoother cut, but there are a couple of reasons why I've not done that. Firstly, to change the blade just for one cut would be quite a lot of effort. There's quite a lot of setup involved. Secondly, I don't actually have a narrower blade. It's the only blade I've got at the moment. So this will do nicely, and I can now smooth off these bits with my sander. Okay, moving on. So I've now sanded down all of the main pieces, and part of the tail. The last thing I need to do is the inside curves of the tail. So we're going to get on with that with this. Okay, there we have it. I've smoothed all the sides, which I'm rather pleased with. I think it looks rather good. Next, I'm going to use the router just to smooth and give a little curve to these edges here and on all the other pieces as well. And then I need to think of some sort of finish for it, which I haven't quite decided on yet, but we'll see soon. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a roundover bit on my router to just go over all the edges of my pieces, just to give them a nicer feel, a nice rounded over edge. And I thought this might be an opportunity to just explain why we go in a certain direction when we use a router. So when you look on a router, I don't have a trim router, but I've got my plunge router. When you look on a router, you will see, if I can get this in the camera, there we go. There's an arrow that says which direction it's spinning. So it spins clockwise, and what we want when we do that is to make sure that we go in an anti-clockwise direction around our piece of work, and that's if we're going around the outside, of course. So in this case, I've got my piece of wood, which is going to be sort of this shaped, and I want to go around it. What we have is the router blade, router bit, here, and it's going in a clockwise direction, so this way. So at this point, the blades, the little, on the outside of the bit, are going in this direction here. And we want to push into the wood, so we are going to move our router in that direction so that the router is being pushed into the wood towards it. Just bashed the camera there, sorry. If it was to go the other direction, so if we were to go in this direction, what would happen is that the router bit could grab the wood and throw us over to the left. So we want to push it into the wood so we have more control. Now, if we were cutting on the inside, which I'm not actually going to be doing here, but if there was a hole in the side of this, for example, and I wanted to also route inside that, I would go in the other direction, because our blades, it would be like this. So there would be my router bit, and it would be turning clockwise, so that direction. So I want to push it into the wood going that way. So when you're doing the inside of something, you work in a clockwise direction. So for the outside, we're going anti-clockwise, pushing into the wood that way. And on the inside, because it's a slightly different edge, we're pushing that way. I hope that was helpful. Let's carry on. Oh, I'm actually quite pleased with that. Bit tricky up in this corner, but I got there. Just got to do the other side and all the other pieces. So now that I've finished rounding over the edges with my router, the next thing I'm going to do is drill the holes for the tops of the legs that will also hold the tail and the neck. I've got these two 240mm long bolts that are M12, so 12mm diameter. So I'm going to need my 12mm drill bit. I've already marked up my pieces. I'll switch on the laser so I can line it up. Now, according to the speed guide, 12mm drill bit into softwood needs to be at 2400 RPM. So this is going to need to be on the fast setting. And we'll set it to 2400. Okay. Bring it down closer. One down. So the next part is to drill a hole through the wood, which is the neck part of the dog, so that I can fit the light fittings and run the cable through. The trouble is, it's quite a long hole that I need to drill. I've got myself an extra long drill bit, so that should be enough to get through. But I don't want to do it with a hand drill because obviously I'll end up messing it up and I'll come out where I don't want to. So I'm using an idea from the Dana Made YouTube channel where he looked at the Bosch drill and he discovered that you can actually turn it round and then have a very long space for drilling, because as it stands, there's not actually enough room for this to fit under the drill. So that's what I'm going to do next. It does make it unstable, so obviously because it's hanging the wrong way. So I have bolted it down and we will see how that goes. So as you can see, I've got this rather Heath Robinson setup, keeping everything together with lots of clamps, and I've measured it all up so that we've got my piece of wood in the right place. The laser is very useful because I was able to keep that on whilst I was setting everything up in order to get it correctly centered. It'll be interesting to see how accurate the laser is over a longer distance. So if I put in my drill bit, and lock it, it does seem to be quite, yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate. So being a softwood, the speed should be 2400 according to my chart. The problem we've got is that with such a long drill bit, and to be honest, quite a cheap one, it's not perfectly straight. If you see when I turn it on, it's going to be wobbling quite a lot. We're just going to have to work with that and see how it goes. The other problem I've got is that I'm only going to be able to go part way down before I've used up the whole extension of the drill press. So I'm going to have to stop and then reposition it. So I don't know how well this is going to go, but let's see how it does. And we're through. Well, it's not as straight as I'd hoped. I think that's probably mainly due to the drill bit not being very straight, because everything else I did check. So I do think everything was straight, so I think it must have perhaps bent as it was going through. However, I think that will do. At least I've got through it. So all we have to do now is connect all the parts for the lamp fitting. So this is going to slide through here. This is the lamp fitting, and what I've done is I have filed down these two edges so that they can fit on the end of the neck like that. And next I'm just going to screw this onto there. Okay, just need to line these up. Okay, we're ready to assemble our doggy. What I haven't done is put a finish on the wood, and I've done that on purpose because I'm going to do another video where I put a slightly unusual finish on it, and I'll need to disassemble the dog in order to do that. But I want to complete this at this stage. So let's get going. I'm going to put the bolts through first. So there's one leg. There's the other leg. We then put the main body on. Then the tail is going to go on the narrower end. I'm so pleased with this tail. I think it's come together really well. Then we've got our lamp end, which is going to be the head. Got a bit tangled, hang on. Then the next part of the body. Finally, the legs again. I've gone with wing nuts because I think you're going to need to readjust them, loosen them and tighten them every now and then if you want to make the dog sit or have a different position, and you don't want to be getting out spanners or anything like that. So big wing nuts I think are the way to go, and that way you can adjust it yourself easily. Okay, I just need to get a bulb and the lampshade. I'll be back in a second. So here we have our finished dog lamp. Let me switch the light on. So there we go. So I've gone to begin with a round paper lantern light because I thought it would look like a head, and it actually reminds me a little bit of Astro from the Jetsons. I don't know if you ever remember the Jetsons, but he had, when he was out in space, he had a big bowl over his head. So Yes, or maybe we'll call this version Astro. So I've changed the lampshade now, and I think this one works much better, to be honest. But the nice thing about having a lampshade for a head is that you can swap them out and just choose whichever one you like the most. I deliberately went for a thick red cord so it looks like a leash and it matches the little collar I've done here. And that's it for now. I hope you've enjoyed the making of my dog lamp, and maybe it's inspired you to have a go at making one yourself. Apart from that, thanks for watching.